Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Take 5, the podcast where we pick a cinema legend and take 5 of their films to examine, to understand their brilliance and range. My name is Austin Luger.
My name's Ray Martindale.
And we're on part 5 now of our Werner Herzog 5, and we are honored to have a guest with us this week.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! We have Tim Irwin, who just completed an acclaimed tenure at Heartland Film in Indianapolis, and now he's a prolific guest lecturer.
Hi, great to be on with you guys.
Awesome. What was your guest lecture about?
I spoke about short films and how programmers on the festival side of things, look at short films, what they look for, how they program short films. Trying to help some students kind of understand the short film landscape as it relates to film festivals. So hopefully they can use their work to further their careers, because nobody's getting rich off of short films, essentially.
No one's getting rich off podcasts
either. I'll take your word for that. Not that I doubt you at all. But
well, Tim, when you were at Heartland, you did program some short films that went on to be nominated for Oscars.
Yeah, it was really fun. We had a bunch of shorts that were nominated for Oscars, and it's always fun seeing the filmmakers that we had at the festival in October mingle with all of the other Academy Award nominees the following winter, spring. It's like, hey, there's Tim Record, this guy that I knew who directed a short film, and 2 seats in front of him in the Oscar luncheon picture is Anne Hathaway, who's about to win an Oscar, or Steven Spielberg's like 3 rows back. And it's fun. And he did an animated short in, I think that was the year you were there, Austin, too.
It was, yeah. That was a fantastic short called Head Over Heels.
Yeah, and I think something from Disney beat it, but he's working on his feature-length film for Sony now, feature-length animation for Sony, which I believe is due out in 2017. So it's really, it's cool to have the chance to see some up-and-coming filmmakers, be able to further their career and then start working on major big-budget major motion pictures, just keep in touch with them the whole way.
We mentioned that you were a guest lecturer, but I don't think we said exactly where you were guest lecturing at. So, where were you guest lecturing at?
Oh, I just did a little guest lecture at Indiana University for the radio and television, some of their short film classes there down in Bloomington, Indiana.
Awesome.
So that was fun.
Now, during the lecture, did you mention how mentally sane we all are after watching 400 short films?
I did talk about it, and now 400 is nothing anymore. I think the last 2 years we had one person do over 500.
Oh my God, jeez.
And, even going on the average length of a short film, which varied between like 16 minutes and 15 seconds and 16 minutes and 45 seconds, depending on how many we got each year, that's a lot of hours, and that gets kind of depressing for the person who has viewed them all. So yeah, it's a little bit insane.
Yeah, but it was fun the years I did it with you. But talking about rewarding experiences and insanity, it's the perfect transition to Werner Herzog.
Very much so.
So this is the fifth film we're covering of his. Previously,
it's the filthiest. Too.
It's the it's actually
G-rated. Rated one of them all.
Yeah, it's actually G-rated. I noticed on the box.
Yep.
The previous weeks we have covered Aguirre, The Wrath of God.
Not G-rated.
Not G-rated.
No.
Nosferatu the Vampyre. Also not G-rated. Fitzcarraldo, Grizzly Man, and now we're covering Encounters at the End of the World. This is a very interesting documentary. It kind of falls in line with a couple of his documentaries where he kind of finds a subject and then goes all in on it in very curious directions. This takes the man who is in opposition against nature in every film to the absolute bottom of the earth, where Werner Herzog gets to go around Antarctica. It is a strange, delightful, meandering movie where he wants to know who and why people would live at the bottom of the world. So I had seen it before in theaters in kind of a weird situation, but it was the first time you two watched this one, right?
It was the first time I'd seen the film. Yeah.
Yeah, same for me.
Yeah.
I had actually, there are a lot of comparisons between this and Cave of Forgotten Dreams in weird ways too. And that one, I remember seeing in 3D in the theater at the time, and actually my greatest fanboy moment ever was being able to interview Werner Herzog on the phone about Cave of Forgotten Dreams.
Oh, wow.
And that was just a surreal experience. And I still, I hadn't seen Encounters at that point. So it was really fun going back and watching this and watching Grizzly Man, and even just being able to compare the two types of films. Very much nature films, but yeah, this one I enjoyed it a lot. I'm excited to talk about it with you too.
Yeah, I wanted to lead off here because I'm afraid in general I may have had a different take than everyone, and we were talking about this before the podcast started about how for whatever reason it seems to trend the one film Eric's got to be a contrarian on is usually the one where we have a guest on. But that's not necessarily the case here. I mean, I did get something out of this film. I did enjoy this film. I just feel like I've seen better films on the same subject, I guess, as far as Antarctica is concerned. But the one thing that kind of struck me odd, and obviously the floor is sort of here to disagree after this, and I'd be interested to hear what you say. Austin, you just said that you thought that the movie was interested in why people would go to live at the bottom of the world, and I didn't necessarily get that from the film at all. I think that as subjects of the film, they are interesting in and of themselves because they're living at the bottom of the world. But it's kind of a weird film in that from the beginning of the film that kind of feels like what it's going to be about, but that's not necessarily what it becomes about. I almost feel like Herzog got bored of that topic. It almost seems this film almost seems schizophrenic in that regard because it's really interested in the nature. It's certainly interested in the under the ice, which is obviously a big featured part of the film, and why people go down there and what they're necessarily researching. But there are also several times where he cuts off people and says, "Whatever this guy's telling you is boring." This is
I love those.
I know. Oh, they're hilarious. They're hilarious. Yeah, this is what this guy's telling you. And part, and of course, why. And Herzog's kind of a master at this. He points the camera at what's the most interesting. He's not going to point the camera at someone who isn't interesting. So he's going to fill you in what it is. But then at that point, I'm wondering why it's in the film to begin with.
Well, to me, and Tim, I want your thoughts on this as well. To me, this is one of his more humanistic films because while he does really kind of appreciate the unseen beauty of the nature, like under the ice and kind of these massive landscapes, to me, the film seems to find even more joy in finding that there's a linguist who wants to talk about dying languages in Antarctica.
Yeah, okay.
And it's that kind of curiosity as he kind of goes place to place, and that is what interests him more than it's more he wants to talk about their philosophy, and I think that's where his excitement goes. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there probably are better Antarctica films out there, but this is really only maybe a third about Antarctica. I mean, it's more about the people, I think, and I would disagree that I think there are so many characters that pop up. He spends so much time with the people, and then a third about him. There are these religious interludes throughout most of it, where sure we're seeing the nature of everything, but we're hearing this Eastern Orthodox chanting and this other very grandiose religious inspired music throughout it, and then there's that one of the final sequences where they send up the balloon and they're talking about neutrinos, and they're like, we're trying to measure the spirit world. They don't really exist they exist. We know about them, but we can't touch them. We can't grab them. He is, I think meandering is maybe a good word in a way, because it does go all over the place, but it's only maybe a third a nature film the way that we think about, planet Earth. And I think, some of the BBC stuff has more, fantastic footage perhaps, but the way he brings this together, and humanist is a good word, but also coldly humanist. I mean, he knows that humanity is done for at some point, and the next species is going to find this swordfish or codfish or whatever buried underneath the South Pole, frozen in ice that doesn't belong there, and he's concerned with that too, and it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And even though he does cut off certain people, and I think it's hilarious, she just goes on for
really
20
funny.
more minutes, and this is the key, and this guy's an idiot, and this is why. He does care about what they're doing, and he has his own opinion, and he's very forthright in that, and I always respect that because it is always interesting to listen to.
Well, he seemed okay. So I guess not interested in the humanity of it. Certainly he is, but he does appear to judge it at times. Like he judges humanity, and he does the same thing in Grizzly Man. He does it in Into the Abyss as well. Well,
it's curious that He's one of the few documentarians that inserts himself so fully into a documentary.
Well, I thought it was odd. Like, so he arrives at the and I can't remember it, but the main sort of hub in Antarctica, and he's basically disgusted by it because it's too much like, it's too much like home, right?
Yeah.
It's got a bowling alley is one thing he specifically stands. So he's got to get away from this. So I guess. So you're in Antarctica, you're there to film a documentary. If it's not about, you don't want to get away from the people, you want to get out into nature, but then it's not really about nature either, it's about the people. I don't know. It seemed to me, and maybe, this is, you got a documentary like Grizzly Man that's about Timothy Treadwell, that's the subject, and that's who we're talking about, and overlying, like on the top of that, that's the surface level stuff. Is also, this is nature, it's indifferent and whatnot and all those other things. This just seemed, I just never got a true sense of what the film was about. I guess that's what it is. I guess, yes, there it is about people. It's also about, there's also the religious thing, I think is really apt that Tim pointed that out as well. And it's the nature thing. It's just so much, and yet I don't know. I know I just meandered talking right then, but I don't have a lot to say about the movie, I guess.
Well, to me it's curious. I mean, it's called Encounters. To me, documentaries is such a bizarre medium in a way, because there's almost two ways of making a documentary. One, the event is over and you're now going back to make a documentary about the Civil War, and there you are. Or you are discovering something as you film it.
Yeah. And
that is such that can make some of the most amazing results, or it can make a really lackluster result. But I think as Herzog, goes to Antarctica with no sense of a narrative and discovers all this, it has its own kind of beauty of what makes him happy and curious, and then he crafts a film that also captures that, I think. Yeah, no,
I would agree with that too. Like, at its core, like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not. Into the Abyss is a film that's trying to make a point that capital punishment's wrong. There's Timothy Treadwell's the subject of Grizzly Man, and specifically Encounters at the End of the World. It was whatever it was going to be whenever Werner Herzog got down there and started filming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, Tim, are you wanting to jump in here? I know we keep talking.
He's one of the, he's one of the filmmakers. I'd perhaps give him, I'd take his films with a grain of salt, because I appreciate his worldview so much, and I don't always agree with it, but I appreciate the way that he does judge people sometimes, and he does have his own perspective, and he's not making, I don't feel like he's ever making a film to advance that perspective in the way that like someone like Michael Moore might, but he's bringing his own perspective to the people that he talks to, and I think as Austin pointed out, the Encounters is a key part of this, and I love when the title of the film actually pertains to the movie a bit. I mean, because he's encountering not just the people and the little critters and the monsters under the sea, but pure nature, and then in the end, like these neutrino things, which are they God? Are they the spirit world? I mean, that's another interesting element of it for sure. But with Herzog specifically, I enjoy whatever he presents. I'm going to enjoy it and appreciate it because of who he is in a way. And most, no one else can really get away with that. David Lynch probably can, because everyone kind of knows what they're getting into. It's a David Lynch film. And in a similar way, at least for me, with Herzog, I know that he's going to have this approach. And even though he talks throughout a lot of the film and narrates it and does have an opinion, he never shows up on camera, I don't think, in this film, just like with Grizzly Man. He's never in front of the camera. And that's an interesting choice as well, because even though we sense his presence, we don't have to confront it the same way he confronts his subjects in a way. Actually, I think in Grizzly Man he does show up when he's listening to the audio recording.
Yeah, that's the only time.
When he's listening
that's
to
the only thing I can think of. And it's from behind. You don't see his face, I don't think, and that's such a unique moment as well. But yeah, it's just really interesting to me all around.
Well, and it's always curious the way he shows his subjects, because he could easily made it, like they're in the bottom corner of the screen. You could show the great landscape behind him, but he really likes to get up and personal with the way he's filming them. Oftentimes they're even just right in the center of the frame, as if like they're in part of a conversation and he's just actively listening to him, or until he stops and comes back.
One thing that I have noticed while we've been doing this vibe is that even the films that aren't documentaries are filmed much the same way. As far as like Aguirre, watching Aguirre the Wrath of God, which is a film that I absolutely adore. I think it's fantastic. It almost always felt like Aguirre was the subject of a documentary. And this travel, this voyage down this river is part of that documentary as well. The camera always seemed to be, and I know I mentioned this earlier, the camera just always seemed to be pointing at what was most interesting, and through that, hopefully that weaves a narrative worth seeing. And that kind of happens here with Encounters for me. It just doesn't have the glue that, say, Klaus Kinski had, obviously.
Well, it's hard to capture, Kinski on camera.
But Treadwell came very close.
Treadwell came very close.
So that's kind of the point I'm making with it.
Well, I guess this one is such about little things. When you talk about, like, what he finds interesting in the moment with the camera, one of my favorite sequences in the movie is the training sequence for whenever they have to encounter a storm.
I love that.
And just to kind of watch them all wear absurdist buckets on their head and do what is an important training sequence, but by the nature of the training sequence, they're not going to nail it on their first time. So you just keep watching them walk in the wrong direction.
From like 20 different angles. That was great.
That is a great Herzog absurdity observation.
That made me want to watch John Carpenter's The Thing again, a movie that I adore. That I try to watch I used to try to watch every October, November after the festival, just to get some good horror going in my brain. And that scene particularly, I was thinking, I could go for The Thing right now.
Yeah.
Well, the most horrifying scene in this movie must be brought up, which is that poor penguin.
As soon as Austin mentioned insanity at the beginning, I'm just thinking, of all, he asked first off, he introduces the guy by saying, "Hey, I heard he's terrible at talking to humans."
Yeah, I know.
And he's a worthless interview. I mean, he puts it in his very Herzogian, pragmatic German way. But hey, this guy's hard to talk to. And then he's like, "Hey, dude, have you seen any gay penguins?" And then he's like, are any of them insane? And the guy's like, I reject your definition of insane. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. And it gets at the same point, and they're coming at it from such vastly different perspectives. And it is fascinating. And then, just kind of heartbreaking but also horrifying.
There was something
when the penguin just doesn't move, then goes off so far.
I know. Well, what's I found about it is there's something oddly romantic about it, and by that I mean literally romantic period. Like if you look at every painting for the romantic period, it's someone going towards a journey they're definitely going to die on, and that penguin, man, and he was so cute, and he was walking away, but yet. Of course, we get this. I guess it's this really dark humor from Herzog about how doomed this penguin is walking off into this wasteland.
I can't stop laughing at that scene.
Well, just as doomed as humanity is, walking off into the precipice of our abyss. To take it down a notch. Humor-wise.
I guess, there's definitely some allegory there that's trying to be put on display.
It's like he's showing, like, this is such a dangerous part of the world, and there's a reason why it's so, like, underpopulated. It's only there of, like, scientists and weirdos who are down there, it appears. And there's a sequence in the movie that just made me excited for the movie that just came out on Netflix. I haven't watched it yet, but when he covers the volcano, that was one of the most effective scenes with that music to me, just because like Herzog's wondering kind of why we stare into the sun in this way, and this is one of the most violent creations that the Earth has made for us, and yet we study it, and especially to see it in a place that kind of the rest of the film is very kind of still and quiet, even underneath the ice. Here is a mountain of fire.
That I thought was really neat. The everything I saw I thought was really neat. That was never my issue. I guess I should probably make that clear. I did like the movie. Everything that I saw I thought was really neat. I just don't know what it came together as for me. That's basically what it was at the end of the day. Every vignette was I thought really neat. I was going to also, first of all, the gay penguin question. I just wanted to say that one time. That was like my favorite thing. in the movie when he asks, because he makes fun of this guy for being a bad interviewer and then asks if there's gay penguins. And what's funny is I was watching the film at the time. I was watching with my girlfriend, and she had not seen a Herzog documentary and did not familiar with just kind of how kooky he is, and or can be. And she actually said, just to make the joke way better, she goes, "He's a terrible interviewer," which I just lost it when she asked that question or made that statement.
Well, that was kind of set up at the beginning of the film where he's doing the narration about just going to Antarctica. Like, he belittles the idea of even filming penguins.
Yeah,
like it's like he's pissed off about that, and this was like a scene that almost felt like the producers made him do, but he's going to do it in exactly his way and ask 2 questions only.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Martian Penguins had come out just a couple years before and had taken the world by storm. So I think he had to address that in order to just get it off people's minds in a way.
Yeah, and there's cheating penguins as well.
Prostitute penguins and sane penguins. No, not really any gay ones unless it's a confused 3-way.
Exactly. I'm glad we got that cleared up. I've been wondering that. Some of the underwater shots, by the way, incredible. Underwater filming was fantastic. The some of the creatures down there just look otherworldly. I mean, it looks like monsters. Yeah, it looks like something out of an H.P. Lovecraft story. I was really creeped out specifically by the one that was glowing for no reason, just like a glowing line. I was like, what is this? So those are really neat too, but also I liked that individual story of the scientists that were specifically going down and they were, coming back up and then talking about all the new stuff they've just found, like I don't know, it was great. It was great.
And that one, I mean, I'm enjoying this talk because I'm realizing how much religion actually did play a part into this movie. I loved it when Herzog made the observation that they were like priests before mass. How quiet they were.
Yeah,
and
ritualistic.
And to do that, and then to also go down there with literally no compass because they're too close to the actual pole of the Earth, was such a. And we talked about it with Aguirre. It's when you kind of have these impossible journeys that test what a person could do. It just feels religious in of itself, and that's what they're doing for the sake of science.
Also, finding new life down there.
Yeah,
they're literally bringing up stuff that's new and how excited they get about it. Like I don't know. I found that interesting. It's not a type of. I feel like it's kind of human nature to look outward, sort of like towards the stars, so to speak. But to actually say, oh yeah, our own planet's pretty magnificent as well. You know what I mean? I thought that was pretty neat. But, so when Herzog does a film in space,
oh my god, opening day for that one. But Tim, did you find that the vignettes gelled together for you?
Well, I can understand Eric's point about it does kind of feel like a bit more a series of vignettes, and I think that's where just enjoying Herzog's worldview lets me put them together in an easy way that I don't need to follow any straight through narrative necessarily or fully understand a single point that he's getting at, and I'm okay with that. I'm just enjoying the overall experience. I can definitely understand that point, and I wouldn't argue that it's one of his strongest films as a result. But I think the different questions that he gets at in kind of the 3 major areas that he hits on the nature and the animals and the people, and then kind of the broader philosophical, religious questions in a way. I think that all comes together in a big, it's still somewhat nebulous and maybe ephemeral mix, and I enjoyed that.
He had to write a lot. He had to put a lot of work into the narration, I think.
Whatever, he just improvised all. He's Werner Herzog.
Yeah.
No, he probably did. I bet you're right.
No, it just seemed like I don't want to say overly narrated because it wasn't, but he did seem like, just in general, he talked more in it.
Well, especially compared to Grizzly Man.
Yeah, well, you could just shut
Timothy
up and take that film over.
Yeah,
but even in and I keep bringing this up because it was the other documentary of his I saw most recently was Into the Abyss too, which was him interviewing. So it didn't seem like he had to write.
Yeah.
Not that he had to write anyway. I think Tim made a good point there, but...
Well, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, Tim, and we have to ask about it. What was that interview like?
It was bizarre. I was sitting in an audio studio in Broad Ripple in Indianapolis and, just freaking out. And Cave of Forgotten Dreams, I don't know, have either of you seen it?
I saw it, yeah.
I know what the subject's about, that cave with the paintings.
Yeah.
And whatnot. Yeah, I have not seen the film. No,
And
I hear it's fantastic. I haven't seen it.
It is really good. I would compare it much more to this film almost in a way where he talks a lot through it. He interviews a little bit, but it's his narration that kind of carries it through. And it's been years since I've seen it. But it's his narration of what's going on and his interpretation of what he's showing us that makes it interesting. But yeah, the phone interview, I had like 15 minutes with him. I had my list of questions. I was in a professional audio studio. I was like, all right, gotta be professional here and not freak out and fanboy this up. And we had a great conversation. I didn't even really remember what was going on at the time because I was worried about making noises on my end of the audio that would be unusable. And then I asked one question toward the end, and he was talking and answering the question, and his handler, because he was basically on a press day for the film, so his PR people had 15-minute segments lined up with probably dozens of media outlets who all wanted a little piece of him about the film, and so they were on a tight time frame. But as he was talking, his handler butts in and is like, "Hey, it's time to go," and he kind of chuckled and made a comment about it being like a jail. It was just perfect. And that, we cut it out of what we published online, but I asked the audio engineer for the full recording, so I have that privately. And that was a Herzog moment, I think, that I really enjoyed in the interview. But yeah, that was a career highlight for sure.
That's wonderful. Werner Herzog spent a week in Indiana University a handful of years ago when I was still living in Indiana. And I did it. I kind of went there, stayed on my buddy's couch, and just kind of went to all of his events that week. And there was one point after, I think I was doing a double feature of Nosferatu and Bad Lieutenant Protocol New Orleans, and he was standing outside between them. I was like, okay, this is my chance. I mean, it's Werner Herzog. I need to, I just want to say anything to him. I'm never that kind of guy with celebrities, but it's him. And I didn't even end up doing it because a bunch of students were all standing in a circle, and there was this young student who was half the size of him, and she looks up at him and says, "Do you know what the world's greatest psychopath is?" And Werner Herzog just nods, and she says, "Bacteria." And he says, "Of course." And the two of them just discussed bacteria for a while, while the rest of us just enjoyed the moment. I don't need to ask anything.
Wow,
this is what I want.
You sure they weren't related?
Well, she was a small Asian woman, and he was Werner Herzog.
There couldn't have been anything more perfect to say to him, though. I bet he loved that.
Well, as we're starting to close out this thing, I want to kind of bring up a few more moments in the movie that were kind of like that. There's kind of these beautiful moments where Herzog connected with these people. What did we interpret the guy who was, I believe he was a forklift driver, who was also possibly an Aztec king?
Yeah, that's an amazing sequence.
Yeah,
that go on and on. He never cuts that guy off, I don't think.
No, and in fact, he leaves him on so long that he's confused at the end that the camera's still rolling, so he just kind of goes back to work.
Yeah.
And it keeps going, exactly.
Well, there are two guys that are kind of like that. He lets the forklift driver's the guy outside.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you were talking about the guy that was the welder or whatever.
That's the welder.
Yeah, he's like an Aztec. That guy they were both incredible, first of all. That guy's really proud of his lineage. And it's interesting that he would end up here. Yeah. And then the other guy was like a philosopher or whatever, and
how's his lower third?
Yeah.
That's philosopher, comma, forklift.
Yeah, exactly, which I thought was one of I thought that I couldn't tell, actually. Honestly, I was going to say, I don't know if this is pretentious or not, or he's making fun of him or not. He probably is, but he lets him talk the whole time. Yeah, that guy was pretty funny too. But yeah, the Aztec team was great. He's flexing. He's like, "I'm a king," and then he goes back to work. Yeah,
and it was so funny because he kept showing his fingers from facing outward at the camera.
Yeah,
and I'm like, "Oh yeah, those are kind of interesting fingers." And then he flips them around, and I understood what he was talking about the whole time. You don't get a sense of his line, whatever that line, the second digit always lining up until you see it from his perspective. I thought,
and then he
this has made almost no sense this whole time until just now.
Yeah, he did it again. And then you could tell, like, when he went back to work, he looked at Herzog to see if it was, like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause he kind of, like, looks up and then, like, nods and then goes back to work. It was hilarious.
And that was kind of, to me, the beauty of this film, maybe why I love it so much, is that maybe because of the nature of Antarctica itself, everyone's really allowed to just be themselves, the weirdest version of themselves. I love that image of those scientists with electric guitars on top of their house, just jamming out to no one.
Yeah, that was great. The little, like, talent show that they had where the woman stuffed herself into the bag.
Yeah.
You know, like that was interesting.
I think, I don't think he actually makes fun of anybody there. And as Austin said, you're just allowed to be yourself there. And even the woman that he kind of ridicules because she goes on and on forever, and says, hey, she keeps talking, so I'll give you the gist of it. She's the one that is the star attraction, and he says it's obvious why she's the most appreciated performer at the talent show. He has this kind of love or interest in everybody, even if he's judging them at the same time. And I think it's a really interesting combination that we don't, and it's very non-American for sure. And I think that's fun to watch in his films sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think there's also when we were kind of coming up with our 5, we kind of look at trying to make the best range, not necessarily their 5 best films. And I was torn between this one and Bad Lieutenant Port of Call, New Orleans, of what best describes his sense of humor. And even though I laugh more at Bad Lieutenant, Tim, have you seen it?
I have the Blu-ray and I have never seen it. I'm ashamed.
Oh, this is your excuse. Wait till your kid's in bed, though.
Okay.
But it is the best Nicolas Cage performance. And Herzog said in an interview, I didn't know if he was actually on cocaine or not the whole movie. But this is because Herzog's sense of humor to me is very warm, and that's a lot what I get out of this film. It's a very I'm happy to go on story time with Herzog.
Yeah, I get that, and I got that. Like I said, I don't disparage anyone from seeing the movie because I thought every piece of it was beautiful. I just don't know if the movie was.
Yeah.
It's worth noting this movie was nominated for Best Documentary at the Academy Awards.
I think it was a forgiving thing because they shunned Grizzly Man.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I love Grizzly Man. But it lost to Man on Wire, which I think is a better movie.
I do too.
Yeah.
But this was...
So I'm okay with that. Man on Wire is kind of a transcendent documentary. I think like people that never watched documentaries before watch that have seen Man on Wire. So
I weirdly saw both of those at the Indianapolis Landmark.
Yeah.
There's trivia that no one needed to know. That's now broadcast out there.
All right, so I will, I guess, take us out of here.
Let's take it out.
Okay. So if you want to reach us, email us. You can at letstake5@theartimmortal.com, or our Twitter handle. You can tweet at us at theimmortalspod.com. The Immortals. The reason why the Immortal is popping up in both the email and on the Twitter handle is because it's a podcast, another podcast that Austin runs on the network. Tell them about your podcast, Austin.
Every week, the 5 of us review one of the 1,001 movies, albums, food, songs, children's books, and TV shows that you must see before you die. And this week, we reviewed a film that, as of this recording, I've never seen before. The Australian film Romper Stomper, with a young Russell Crowe.
And you know what? I bet you have that in common with everyone else. Yeah. So, if you want to catch me, I also run a YouTube channel. It's Constant Diversion. You can check me on Constant Diversion. So yeah, Tim, do you got anything like that you would like to throw out there? I know you have an aversion to podcasts, so I won't go there.
No, I'm pursuing different things at the moment. I'm heading off to Pakistan on Monday, where I grew up, to work on a few different projects there, so I might have some more news when I get back from that trip.
Oh, awesome.
That's fantastic. And actually, this comes out weeks from now, so you might be back.
Oh, wait, I get back the 22nd, right before Thanksgiving, so maybe it'll be close.
It'll be close. Well, we hope you had a great trip.
Well, thank you. I hope I did too.
Talking to you in the future.
Ooh. Well, but seriously, Tim, thank you so much for being here. It was a delight to talk to you about movies again. It's been too long. And,
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
glad
you
it was
so
a
much for the
Herzog film.
invitation.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you, Tim. It was a lot of fun.
Great to meet you too, Eric.
All right, that is it for our episode. My name is Austin Ligger.
My name's Eric Martindale.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Who are the people who drive the heavy machinery, and what brought them to Antarctica?
It's a long story. I've explored many different lens of the mind and many worlds of ideas. And I started, before I even knew how to read and write, my grandmother was reading the Odyssey and the Iliad to me. So I started my journey in my fantasy before I even knew the means of accomplishing it. But my mind and my psyche was ready for it. I was already traveling with Odysseus and with the Argonauts and to those strange and amazing lands. And that always stayed with me, that fascination of the world, and that I fell in love with the world. And it's been very powerful and it's been with me this whole time.
And how does it happen that we are encountering each other here at the end of the world?
I think that that's a logical place to find each other, because this place works almost as a natural selection for people that have this intention to jump off the margin of the map. And we all meet here, where all the lines of the map converge. There is no point that is south of the South Pole.